Absolutely. I don't like the term Axis because I think like Robert Kagan would be an example of this. There's a tendency to put everything in the mental frame of the 1930s and 1940s, and or to some extent the Cold War, and there is utility in that, but it tends to be used reductively to kind of simplify things and sort of more of like a drumbeat attitude. Whereas, I think there is I think we are forming an anti-hegemonic coalition, but in the perspective of those countries, which have definitely come together as a kind of semi-formal, informal coalition, they believe they're an anti-hegemonic coalition against us and our allies. I mean, if you look at what the Chinese have written about this subject publicly, their Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance, they regard their efforts as against American hegemony. So people can argue about what exactly that is, and it's just, et cetera. But they are coming together shared on based on shared interests. I definitely don't like the term axis of evil, which is even more lurid and kind of cartoonish. Um, uh, because I think they're drawn together by shared interest in opposition to the United States. I mean, you have an Islamic radical theocracy in Iran, and you have a Marxist kind of monarchy in North Korea, and you have a sort of quasi-Marxist nationalist government in China, and then you've got a sort of nationalist, semi-authoritarian government in Russia, and you've got Maduro. I don't even know what he is. It's not primarily ideologically driven. It's driven by these countries having shared interests. Obviously, ideology is an element, but I would say it's secondary. And the other problem with the tendency to go back into this historical stuff, and again, Kagan is a very useful example of this, where he made a very telling error in a Wall Street Journal piece about a year ago, where he said that China's less of a threat than the three Axis states, and we overwhelm them. And that's a mistake. Actually, the Chinese economy is larger relative to the United States than the three Axis states were in 1941. And bear in mind that we allied with the Soviet Union, and not just Great Britain, but the British Empire, right? There are a lot of Indians who were killed in World War II, and they will remind you, and justifiably so. So, we are not in a situation where we don't have an arsenal of democracy right now. We have offshored the arsenal of democracy to China. So we are in bad shape.